What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matthew Moreno, and a special guest making his DodgerHeads debut, David Vassegh, entering year 13 of covering the Dodgers for Sportsnet LA, and obviously the host of Dodger Talk as well. David, thanks for joining us, and congrats on the beginning of year 13.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Happy to be here. You guys do a great job with your website. I recommend all Dodger fans, if they want to supplement their AM 570 Dodger Talk fill, to hang out with you guys. You're the best out there. So glad to be with you.
Well, we appreciate that. Let's jump right in. The big news, of course, in Dodgerland is Clayton Kershaw is back. You were kind of on social media saying that, this is a story you, of all people, have been on the most. So I'm curious. I'll ask it this way. Like, when did you start to become confident that Kershaw was going to be back as a Dodger in 2024? And do you have any insight into what maybe was it, he wanted to wash the bad taste of how last year ended? Is he chasing 3,000 strikeouts? Was Ohtani the clincher? Like, talk me through kind of what you knew and what you do know now about Kershaw.
Well, it goes back to the interview we did with him on Dodger Talk back in December. That's the only time we've heard from him since the postseason, including right now. So just the tone in his voice, the determination in his voice to find a way to come back, pick himself back up again and pitch in the major leagues, whether it was for the Dodgers or Rangers. And obviously he's made it pretty clear that it's going to be Dodgers or Rangers. And if you look at the Rangers situation, they've got three high-priced pitchers not able to pitch for them until the second half of the season. Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, and they just signed Tyler Mahle from the Reds. Yeah. How are they going to fit in a fourth pitcher, the caliber of Clayton Kershaw, and the question marks surrounding him coming back in August and navigate through 162 games and fill the innings needed to get through a marathon of a season? Not to mention, they really haven't been spending the way that they have the last couple of years. Part of that is their regional sports network contract. It was in limbo up until a couple of days ago. So it just didn't feel like the circumstances were presenting itself for Kershaw to go to the Rangers this year. And from the standpoint of the Dodgers, going back to the winter meetings, they've been very open with him. Andrew Friedman and Dave Roberts have called him and reassured him how much they want him back, even with all the upgrades they've made this year. So when you look at the courting, the Dodgers were still courting him, while the Rangers felt a little less aggressive than they have been the last couple of years. And talking to some of his teammates, it feels like they've known for the better part of 2 or 3 weeks. So he's done a good job of keeping it quiet, but he told a few people that he plays with that, yeah, he's coming back, and they were just trying to work out a contract.
Dave, so do you think then, in that sense, like, had the Rangers maybe not been in the situation of having multiple pitchers who aren't maybe going to be ready until around the All-Star break or at least into the season, if that wasn't the case, do you think they would have been more appealing for Clayton?
No doubt. I mean, I don't believe it's more appealing to Clayton. It would have been more appealing to the Rangers to take this gamble. So, yeah, I feel like if they didn't have those three guys that aren't able to pitch until the second half of the season, and let's keep in mind, they're coming off the World Series as well. So the urgency may not have been there this offseason like it had been the last couple of years for those reasons.
So now, from the Dodgers' perspective, the reported re-signing of Kershaw, since it's not official yet, we'll keep it at that. It's kind of as Jeff alluded to in our live show yesterday, is sort of the cherry on top to what was a spectacular offseason, I think, for the Dodgers, both in terms of talent and obviously financial commitments. But that's also earned them. I know you heard some of this buzz throughout the offseason and definitely at DodgerFest over the weekend. They're now the proverbial villains of Major League Baseball because they've spent, more than $1 billion this offseason. Where do you kind of land on that whole narrative?
Well, number one, do we have former Dodger and now Oakland A, Ross Stripling, to thank for that narrative, right? He was the first one to go on a podcast and say the Dodgers have gone full villain mode. So I feel like Chicken Strip is to blame for this narrative and this label of villain. But look, the Dodgers have been at the top of baseball in the regular season for the last 11, 12 years. They've had a bullseye on their back for a long time. They've had a lot of great players the last 10 or 12 years. So they've had a bullseye on their back. This doesn't seem any different, except that now everybody's coming out and saying that. So, I don't feel like the cast and crew may have changed a little bit, Matt, but it feels like the organization has been through this. And look, Mookie Betts played in Boston. There's no more of a pressure cooker than that. And, you guys were out there at Dodger Fest. The way Ohtani handled all of that, it tells me that he is so mentally tough at blocking out everything external that he won't have an issue performing under these bright lights.
You mentioned Mookie, his comments with Sportsnet LA that, every team wants to beat the Dodgers now. Excuse me. That for some reason caused an uproar. But like you just said, it's nothing new, right? Like that's been the case every year out. So I don't imagine he said anything wrong.
No, I mean, he said it's going to be the World Series for every team. And my concern is the Dodgers can't play like that, right? Yeah. It's 162 games. And I hate to break this to Dodger fans out there. The Dodgers are not going 162-0. I'm sorry, but it's just not happening. They might break the Mariners' regular season record, but the Mariners flamed out in the postseason that year. So this offseason to me is more about trying to get over the hump of October the last couple of years, because the reality is the Dodgers have only won one playoff game the last 2 years. So Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, those guys were brought in to help the Dodgers get over the October hump.
Yeah. You mentioned Dodger Fest a couple times. Obviously, because of your role, you had some unique access to sort of private interviews. I'm curious, was there anything that you heard on that day that maybe jumps out to you that maybe was something you didn't expect, or something that people maybe haven't heard already?
Well, I thought Walker Buehler was really candid with us about his timeline, because on his own podcast, he's talked about, well, maybe I'm not pitching in spring training this year. Maybe I get into 1 or 2 games at the end. So it was refreshing to hear how candid he was about where he's at and the reality of him probably not starting the season on the opening day roster. And the Dodgers obviously care more about Walker Buehler in October. And let's not forget, Walker Buehler's a free agent at the end of the year, so he has to be careful for his own personal reasons as well.
Talk to us about, Buehler, we kind of know he was ramping up last year, was going to try and make a go of it. The Dodgers, somehow the decision is made that he's not going to be ready. I think because of that, there were lots of fans that were just assuming he would be ready by opening day. Depending on how you read between the lines, it sounds like he could have potentially been ready for opening day technically, but could he have been able to pitch a 162 game season, to be determined. So where exactly would you say the Dodgers are at with Buehler? Are we talking like a month into the season he makes his debut? And is it because he's not fully healthy, or is it just because of an innings limit?
Well, he did tell me at Dodger Fest he had just thrown a bullpen. The ball was coming out really well. The velocity was there. So I wouldn't say he's hurt. It's just that they've got to be cautious with him. Yeah. He's coming off his second Tommy John surgery. The success rate for starting pitchers to come back from 2 Tommy Johns, it's not really high. They come back, but are they as effective as they were before? And the one thing he referenced was Nathan Eovaldi pitching the way he did for the Rangers last year, who also has had 2 Tommy John surgeries, but the Rangers had to shut him down in the middle of the year. He was getting some elbow inflammation. So it's not a linear path to making your way back from an injury like this. And the Dodgers are aware of that. I would say they're better equipped than most to be able to help him manage his innings, and be ready for the stretch run. So I do believe it's more about managing him and managing him to be ready for the second half. And they have enough depth to be able to do that. So I don't know. I would say he will pitch before the All-Star break. I would say I wouldn't expect him before May to pitch.
Wow. What would you say are reasonable expectations for Walker this season? And it's not, is it more kind of, we've seen him be kind of, the October ace and that caliber pitcher, but like you alluded to, he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries at this point. It's going to be his first season back. So is he more kind of, at least for 2024, kind of a middle of the rotation type starter?
I would never put him there, Matt. If he's on the mound, he's the
You were going to get in trouble if you answered that question the wrong way,
Yeah.
I think.
Butane would have gone straight for my neck.
Fair enough. I'm a believer in Buehler. I think Jeff and I have, been on the positive side amongst our staff, and I think his potential certainly is there. I just don't know. That being said, I don't know how
I'm
much.
not sure he knows, Matt. I'm not sure he knows. Sure. I think we're all going to find out whether or not he's able to withstand the rigors of a season after 2 Tommy John surgeries. But I think what gives him confidence and somewhat solace is that Nathan Eovaldi was able to do it and lead the Rangers to the World Series.
Do you know, and I'm not to put you on the spot, have the Dodgers and Buehler talked about a future beyond this year, or do you think everybody's just going to try and let this season play out?
I believe in the past, before he had this second, there was some discussions, but I think at this point, it's rational for both sides to wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah. Okay. Other guys coming back from injury this year, Gavin Lux obviously penciled in as the starting shortstop. A couple guys in the bullpen, Blake Trinan, JP Feyereisen. Any sort of news or updates on are those guys going to be full go in spring training? And is there reason to be optimistic about all 3 of those guys?
Hey, number one, JP Feyereisen, new fan right here. He won me over. First impression, talking to him at DodgerFest, I'm all in with JP Feyereisen. And he told me before DodgerFest started, he threw a bullpen session, and he has a real number, 45. I mean, it's becoming more real, right? So yeah. I would say JP Feyereisen, his first, what he told me on DodgerFest is really encouraging. And I've heard only good things about Blake Trinan. But again, guys, it's not about March or April or even May. It's about October for the Dodgers. So they're going to do whatever it takes. If there is a chance that Blake Trinan can be Blake Trinan of old, they're not going to rush him into that in the first half of the season. They've got enough guys to navigate. But if Blake Trinan comes back, that would be a nasty bullpen with Joe Kelly, Brusdar Graterol, and Evan Phillips. And, there's still some smoke surrounding rumors of Kenley Jansen and the Dodgers. So we'll see by the time next week rolls around whether or not Kenley Jansen's still a Red Sox and whether or not he's a Dodger.
Do you want to elaborate at all on smoke around Kenley Jansen?
I mean, the Red Sox are listening to offers for him. So, Red Sox pitchers and catchers report 2 days before Valentine's Day. If Kenley Jansen's going to be traded by the Red Sox, I would imagine it was going to be before that happens. If not, let's be honest, guys. I hate to break it to Boston. Your team's not that good. You're probably going to finish in last place in the AL East, and you're probably going to be sellers at the deadline. And why do you need a guy with 400 saves, an all-star, as your closer, and you're paying him $15-16 million? That just doesn't add up.
Is Ken sort of a 2-part question? Is Kenley somebody that the Dodgers, 1, could fit into their bullpen, and 2, we obviously just saw them trade Caleb Ferguson to the Yankees and then sort of be replaced, if you will, or at least that bullpen spot with the reported signing of Ryan Brazier?
Look, you can never have too much pitching, Matt. So there is room for a guy that is the all-time LA Dodgers saves leader. I don't know if it's going to happen. Like I said, smoke. I'm not saying there's going to be a Red Sox-Dodgers trade. All I know is, and it's pretty well known around baseball, is the Red Sox are listening to offers for Kenley.
Can you the Ferguson trade that Matt referenced, of all the moves the Dodgers made, obviously not the biggest move, but I was caught completely off guard by that. Was it as simple as they needed to open up a spot sort of on the 26-man roster in order to make the Ryan Brazier signing? Like that just seemed like an odd one to me.
Yeah, it could be for Ryan Brazier. It could be for another bullpen piece. You never know, right? They just had to shuffle the chairs a little bit. And look, everybody keeps talking about how the Dodgers only have Vassegh and Yarbrough in the bullpen kind of right now. But what people don't take into account is Gratterall's great against lefties.
Yeah.
Evan Phillips is great against lefties. Blake Trinan, if he comes back, can get lefties out. Joe Kelly can get lefties out. So the way Andrew Friedman has explained bullpen construction to me in the past is it's not so much about lefty or righty. It's about giving different looks and being able to get both the righties and lefties out. And that's what the Dodgers have done. So, yeah, Vassegh is the only lefty, but all the righties can get lefties out too.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, where it's like if the goal is to get lefties out, Ryan Brazier was better against lefties than Caleb Ferguson was last year. So if your goal is to get lefties out, the Dodgers actually net positive in that regard just by swapping Ferguson for Brazier. So kind of an
That's why
one.
You guys are the best. You recognize that, and you're not obnoxious about it.
One last question on the offseason stuff. The Dodgers were connected, or I should say rumors. We're talking about smoke with a Kenley Jansen type thing. There were Dylan Cease rumors. There were rumors about Josh Hader. There were all sorts of stuff. And, not to say that some of these I'm sure had legs. Others may have just been created narratives. I'm curious, as a guy who's kind of connected, was there anything that you can share from behind the scenes of maybe a move that almost happened or a move that almost didn't happen from the Dodgers offseason?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, the Dodgers were keeping tabs on the Hader market for sure. That $95 million he got from the Astros, no trade clause, no deferrals. That's tough to pass up. So I don't know how deep the Dodgers were in on Hader, but it feels like every player the Dodgers set their sights for this offseason, they've come up money on all of them, starting with Ohtani and Yamamoto. Then they don't stop there. They trade for Tyler Glasnow. He was a guy that was highly coveted by a lot of other teams. They pulled that off, and then they signed Teoscar Hernandez. And then they're able to bring back Ryan Brazier and Joe Kelly. I mean, I can't think of an offseason during Andrew Friedman's tenure where he's hit on seemingly every target that they had in the offseason. Yeah, maybe they came up one short, but I'm saying batting 1,000, I think they're batting 1,000 this offseason.
Yeah. Let's shift to spring training here. Obviously, pitchers and catchers reporting this week. For you, is there a storyline or something that you're just going to keep an eye on? Maybe it's a particular player. I want to see how this guy performs or how this guy bounces back or how these pieces fit together. But what are kind of, and you could, as many as you've got, but storylines or players that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I don't believe there's a shortage in storylines. I think the biggest thing for me is the role players. How are they going to fit in around these guys, right? How is James Outman going to bounce back from a horrific NLDS? Sophomore season, pitchers have the book on him now. How is he going to adjust to them? Because, going back to when Don Mattingly was the manager, they talked about the cat and mouse game. How's the cat and mouse game going to work for Outman? He's a key piece to all this. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. And also, guys, as we get into Dodgers spring training, at least they are the first team, them and the Padres reporting. There's still a lot of good players out there. Are any of them going to be Dodgers? And I'm not talking about trades. I'm talking about signings, and not just the Boris 5, but guys like Mike Lorenzen's out there. Kike Hernandez is still out there. I'm curious to see, because of how this offseason has really gone so slow and a lot of good players are still out there on the eve of camp opening. Do any of them end up with the Dodgers? That's something to look for as well, because of the unusual offseason of how long this has played out.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what I was going to say. We've seen this somewhat in years past where the free agency is a little slow, but then eventually it kind of, by now, I feel like it would have certainly sped up. Are you surprised? Is there a specific reason why? I know a lot of people are pointing to it's Scott Boras. He likes to hold out and get his guys their long-term contracts, stuff like that. Is it that simple, or are there other factors that could explain why free agency has been so slow? Really, like we mentioned earlier in the show, the Dodgers are being painted as a villain, but if they wouldn't have spent, the money that they have, free agency would have been relatively quiet.
Yeah, honestly, Matt, there's if you just look at the history of Boris clients, like big name clients or guys that he believes are big market value guys, they're not usually taking short-term contracts. So I feel like that's the rub here, where a lot of these guys are being offered short-term contracts, and that's not what they're looking for.
Fair enough.
You mentioned some guys that are still out there. It's interesting with the Dodgers. We know there's some 40-man roster spots that are going to open up in the next couple of days as the 60-day IL becomes available to them. Kike Hernandez is a player that's been rumored. Would you, if you had to pick yes or no on the Dodgers making another move, whether it's free agency, whether it's a trade like a Kenley Jansen type trade, would you sort of be placing your bet on the side of yes to another move?
I would.
Okay.
Because of just how many good players are still out there. And look, their kind of backs are against the wall to be with the team. So, you always hear the buzz phrase from Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes, like being opportunistic. Seems like there's a lot of opportunities out there with some really good players.
Do you think they have room on the position player side? Like, is that a place where they could make a move?
They would have to shuffle some chairs, right?
Yeah.
They're full right now, position player wise. They would have to shuffle some deck chairs to add another position player.
I have somewhat of a, I don't want to call it a crazy theory, but my theory that I've been floating to these guys is with the Kenley Jansen speculation. What if, the Dodgers look to make a trade with the Red Sox? They send Manuel Margot as part of that, however it comes together, and then you re-sign Kike. Because I'll be honest, like, I'm shocked that, that Kike wasn't necessarily re-signed, and I get Margot kind of had to be part of the Glasnow trade for various reasons. But that's, speaking of kind of rearranging the deck chairs, that's how I see it happening on the position player side.
Yeah, that's a scenario that's not like crazy to think. I think that's reasonable, and you're not pulling from the hopper with that one, Matt. So yeah, something similar to that. If you wanted Kike back, you would have to find a way to move a player on your position player side to bring him in.
This spring,
and injuries, right? Injuries. Yeah. I feel like some of these guys are waiting to see if anybody gets hurt in spring training. I really, at this point, I think that's what they're waiting for. And then all of a sudden, any one of these teams is in much more need of their services.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think your point is a good one. This is the type of scenario that Andrew Friedman typically capitalizes on. From the outside, I just keep doing the math on, like, would it be great to add a Kenley Jansen? Of course. I'm just doing the math on, like, how many guys have.
Are you sure? I'm sure a lot of your readers and viewers, it feels like doing Dodger Talk, they did not appreciate Kenley as much as they should have.
I think
it feels like they did not appreciate him at the end.
Totally. Well, and I think it would be fascinating. I mean, you get it. People have opinions on everything. I think Kenley Jansen had some roller coaster moments. I think from a fan perception, there were moments that maybe they wished he would have handled some things a little bit differently than he did. But a part of me would like to believe that there could be this reunion kind of at the end, that he comes back, that the situation's a little bit different. He's been gone for a couple of years, because my biggest question with Kenley would be, what's his role? That was a big conversation when he was here last on, hey, I want to be the closer. Like, I want to be the guy that gets the ball in the ninth. And the Dodgers admittedly don't have, if they continue to use Evan Phillips in the way that they have, then that role potentially is open. But I would personally poetically love to see the full circle moment with Kenley coming back and winning the approval back of the people that maybe have a bad taste in their mouth.
Look, he has 70 saves the last 2 years with the Braves and Red Sox. He was an all-star last year with a not very good team. If he's on any team out there, he's the closer until proven otherwise, because he's had somewhat of a renaissance here the last 2 years. He has 400 saves now. He has his eyes on 500, so he's continuing to work to be that premier guy.
Yeah. One last question, and then we're going to end with a couple rapid fire things.
Okay.
Spring training related again. Is there a player that you would tell the people watching our show, hey, keep an eye on this, maybe a pitcher, maybe a position player. Hey, just keep an eye on these two, because maybe you've heard some things or there's optimism about players that maybe isn't sort of publicly known yet. But any guys in particular?
I've heard interesting things about this non-roster invite named Jesse Hahn.
Okay.
He hasn't pitched in Major League Baseball for 2 years, but scouts around the league that have watched him work out have told me they believe he could be another one of those Dodgers diamonds in the rough. So Jesse Hahn's a guy to watch in spring.
Okay. Anybody on the position player side?
I mean, they got all-stars everywhere. Who's to watch? I mean, I guess Gavin Lux to see how his knees recovered, but outside of him, I don't think so. I think I'm pretty confident with everybody else on this team.
Fair enough. Miguel Vargas, like, have you heard anything about sort of, is he going to be moved to the outfield? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I guess that's something to watch, how the Dodgers deploy him and whether or not he can bounce back from a season where the Dodgers handed him the starting second base job and he wasn't up for it for a number of different reasons. It seems like just watching his videos on social media, his swing looks a little bit more fluid and less mechanical than it did last year, and more like the guy that we saw the last 2 years in the minor leagues. So yeah, Miguel Vargas is a good one.
Okay. Well, let's end with a couple rapid fire questions here, David. You ready
for this? I thought that was one of them.
No. That was just the primer, that was just the primer. You mentioned earlier wins and the Dodgers aren't going to go 162-0. You mentioned the Mariners, a team that set the record. I mean, do you have a number in your head of how many games you think the Dodgers are going to win this year?
I'm going to say they're going to win at least 100 games again for the fourth consecutive full season. That's as far as I'm willing to go. I know, Matt, you posted something about Pacoda. How many did Pacoda have the Dodgers?
I'd have to double check it. Let me see. Blake actually wrote that.
I was going to say, Matt's our big eye test. He's our big eye test guy. So he's asking the nerds how many wins they think they're going to get. This is surprising.
Pacoda had them at 101 wins. And
there we go.
That would be the best record in baseball according to their calculations. I think that's a little low. I think they're around 103.
This year will be interesting to me because, you mentioned the moves that they've made. The goal is to get over the hump. And with some of the moves, like the way that they're handling Walker Buehler's development, the signing of Clayton Kershaw, it feels like they're announcing to the world something we already know. The goal is to win in the playoffs. The goal is to win in the World Series. And so I'm just curious to see, are there going to be moments of more lethargy maybe than we've seen in years past because the focus is so heavily on,
trust me, the fans home and away are not going to allow them to be lethargic in any one of these games. But, the rigors of travel and 162 games, it is a grind. But the Dodgers have done a great job of load managing a lot of guys. I mean, they're moving Mookie Betts to second base.
Yeah.
Doesn't get more load management than that.
Yeah. All right. Which Dodger finishes highest in Cy Young voting this year?
James Paxton. That's a tough question for me to answer. I guess, I don't know. I guess I'll go Yamamoto. I mean, he is the highest paid pitcher on the staff, right? So I'll go with him.
Okay. Same question, but on the position player side, which Dodger finishes highest in MVP voting?
Mookie.
Okay. These are great questions for Dodger fans uniquely because it's like there's 2 to 3 guys that you're choosing from, it feels like, in every one of these categories. I mean, they had second and third last year, and then they added the AL MVP into that equation as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't see Ohtani winning MVP as a DH unless he does something extraordinary, like hit 60 home runs.
Yeah. Margin of victory in the NL West, assuming we're penciling in the Dodgers as the NL West champion.
Yeah, I'm a big Diamondbacks advocate too, because last year it was a rebuild season for them, and they finished like 16 games behind the Dodgers.
Yeah.
They're going to be better than that this year, especially with the confidence they gained going to the World Series. So I feel like the Diamondbacks will be improved, but the Dodgers have improved tremendously. So the margin of winning the West is going to be similar. I'd say at least 10-game winners of the division.
Okay, last one, and it's the obvious one that you probably knew was coming. Are you are you predicting a World Series championship for the Dodgers in 2024?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
You always take the field. You always take.
I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not here to be that guy.
Fair. I just had, it's a question we have
you
to
saw
ask.
my cold brew right here. You thought you could sneak that in and me guarantee a World Series championship. No, I am not doing that. But I do believe they, if they stay healthy, they have a great chance to get to at least the NLCS, something they haven't done the last 2 years.
Okay, I like it. Well, hey, David, we know that your life is about to get crazy busy with spring training, pitchers and catchers, and then of course the regular season. So very much appreciate you coming on our show, and tell the people about shows you've got coming up, places they could find you, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll be contributing to Sportsnet LA during spring training, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week, and of course you can listen to Dodger Talk on AM 570 LA Sports. And stream it on the iHeartRadio app and podcast it on the iHeartRadio app. Do you want more? You want like my Twitter? Or what do you guys want from me?
Go for it.
You can see me on Ventura Boulevard in the West Valley.
Where are you eating on? Oh, we should ask you a food question. We're a big food podcast over here, but we should ask. Do you have a favorite spot that you like to eat on Ventura Boulevard?
Yes, Soli Luna, right there on Ventura, best Mexican spot in the valley.
Okay, there you go. You heard it here. So, well, hey, we appreciate the time.
No reservations, just a warning.
Okay. Thank you for your time, David. Best of luck, spring training and beyond. We appreciate everything you do. Great coverage for Dodger fans, great access and insight. So thanks again for everything. And, enjoy your last couple of days of downtime before everything goes crazy.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Great joining you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on Dodger Heads. Of course, you can subscribe and ring the notification bell below if you're a podcast person. Dodger Heads on Apple, Spotify, and Google as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. As always, go Dodgers.